Welcome to English for Professional Mechanical Engineers. My name is Yiji. I'm so happy to have this chance to speak to you about presentation sign post expressions. After the previous section, we are start to a presentation. Today we will learn more skills about how to present during a presentation. For your reference, this is the outline of the all topics about presentation sign post expressions. The yellow parts are the topics covered in the previous video. This video is going to introduce the topics in green. The item numbers are 4, 5, and 6 in this slide. The materials will cover 1. Showing respect for listeners' knowledge. 2. Moving from section to section. 3. Looking at visuals. Okay, are you ready? Let's go. Topic 4 of the unit, showing respect for listeners' knowledge. Right, but why should we show respect for listeners' knowledge? I'm going to offer you 2 reasons. 1. Treat your audience as a king. Your audience deserves to be treated like royalty. It's nice to create friendly environment to enhance the nice communication between the speaker and audience. Secondly, this kind of sentence is something like a reminder for the audience. It indicates that this is something the audience already know. Also, it can probably boost the audience to accept your point of view. Is that awesome? Right, let's go on. So, what kind of sentences we can use to show the respect for listeners' knowledge? Here are some examples. As you may know, as you may know. As you can see, as you can see. As you may be aware, as you may be aware. I know many of you are familiar with. I know many of you are familiar with. Many of you may have performed. Many of you may have performed. I'm sure you are all familiar with X on something. I'm sure you are all familiar with X work on something. These sentences all fit to remind the audience that I'm talking something you have known, and I respect you to have so much knowledge. So, next topic. 5. Moving from section to section. This topic is extremely helpful. During a presentation, it usually has many parts. When we finish one part and we'll move on to the next part, we should say something to remind the audience that we are going to have a new section. So, what can we say in this moment? Okay, here are some useful sentences that we can use to start the first section. So, let me start by something like explaining the background. So, let me start by something like explain the background. Or, so I will start with. So I will start with. Right, so first. Right, so first. Next, I'm going to give 3 more simple ways to move from section to section. When one section is end and a new section is going to start, you may say, we are moving on to. Next, I'll talk about. Okay, so what's next? As you may be aware, these phrases have been used frequently in these videos. In addition, we can check if the audience follow our materials before moving on to the next section. Then we can use a sentence like, right, was that clear? So I'll move on to, right, was that clear? So I'll move on to. Or we can double check if the audience follow the materials by asking some questions like, well, what does this all mean? So, what's the significance of this? Well, what does this all mean? So, what is the significance of this? During a presentation, we probably want to move on to a section regarding our reports. We can use the following sentences in this situation. Let's take a moment to look at a few other reports. Let's take a moment to look at a few other reports. So, what have other people say about this? So, what have other people say about this? Or, you would like to move on to a section regarding your own materials or methods. Right. I will introduce our materials and methods. All right. I'll share our materials and methods. Okay. Then how do we move on to the last section? Here are two useful phrases. So, finally. So, finally. That brings us to my last point. That brings us to my last point. Right? Was that clear? So, I will move on to the next topic. 6. Looking at the visuals. During a presentation, visual aids like table, chart, or figure are important for engineers to deliver their ideas. A figure can say 1,000 words. But how do we introduce these visual aids properly? These are some sentences we can draw attention to these visual aids. Now, let's look at. Or, may I focus your attention on the table, chart, or figure? May I focus your attention on the table, chart, or figure? You will notice that. Okay, so you can see a summary of our results here. Sometimes we would like to have their attention on some specific points. Then we can say something like, please focus on the second row, or please focus on the post. The operative findings in patient 2 are something. That brings us to my last point about the presentation signpost expressions. This section has covered 3 parts. First, showing respect for listeners' knowledge. Second, moving from one section to section. Finally, looking at visuals. So finally, this is the end of the section. So much for today. Thank you for watching. Hope you have learned something useful from this lecture. Have a good time and see you in the next one. Goodbye.